And this brings us to warfare, or really a century of warfare in some regards. So we've seen all this expansion of empires, which is causing competition for, power and also for wealth. And all this is basically going to lead to a series of 4 wars. Now, these 4 wars that we're going to look at, 3 of them we're going to look at on this PowerPoint, and the last one we'll look at on the next PowerPoint, is basically these conflicts are going to increasingly involve the American colonies more and more so, as well as like Spain and its colonies on top of that. The first 2 are both covered on this slide. The thing is, King William's War and Queen Anne's War really had marginal changes for the colonies, but they did have profound effects on the English state as well as the Iroquois League. So the thing is, a lot of how it affects the colonies and everything is basically due to economics and how Europe funded their wars during this time. Basically, European states would finance their wars by borrowing money. The English, though, were the first to realize they didn't necessarily have to repay all the money borrowed during the following peace. Instead, they would fund their debt and basically use tax revenues to pay interest on a lot of these loans, but not pay them off completely. So this would be as if, let's say I borrowed $10 from you. Would you rather me pay you back $10 next week, or would you rather me pay you back $2 every week for the next 3 months? You're not getting back as much in one go, but overall you would make a lot more money if you chose the second choice. So that's exactly what happens here. Is like corporations would basically accept this because the interest being paid back is going to amount to a steady income and could oftentimes be more than the original loan. But simultaneously, the English debt is growing larger. And so to pay off that debt on some level, taxes were really important to pay the interest and pay for, their powerful navy and standing army. So keep that in mind. Taxes, where are we going to go with this after everything is over? The other thing that is really affected by this is the Iroquois League. I actually have mentioned this before when we talked about 3 conflicts with the Native Americans, and then we had that half conflict. This is that. Basically, we're going to see that during this time we get the Grand Settlement of 1701. This is the Iroquois adopting a policy of neutrality in regard to the French and the British empires. They're going to be this geographical as well as diplomatic buffer. And basically the Iroquois played the British and the French off of each other so that they could gain favors and promises of not to ally with one or the other against each other. The thing is, you might be going, oh wow, this puts them in a position of power. This was necessary for them to maintain neutrality on some level, but it also ends up helping the Europeans because now with this standard like neutral stance, basically, the Iroquois are more likely to negotiate with the English for land, sell them land that might have been formerly occupied by other tribes, which satisfies a lot of colonists' hunger for all the new land. Also, with the Iroquois' control over this region, this basically blocks the English and allows the French to really protect their strategic corridor of the Ohio and Mississippi valleys. Which brings us to the third conflict, which is going to involve the American colonies a lot more. This is King George's War that occurs between 1739 and 54. Now, initially, this actually started out as just a small conflict between Great Britain and Spain in particular. The immediate cause was basically the British were attempting to poach on trade in Spain's Caribbean colonies. But in 1744, France would join in this war against the British. And New Englanders are going to see this as their opportunity, their chance to attack Canada. And in fact, that's just what they do. And they would actually capture Louisburg in 1745. And you can see that here on this map. With this attack and everything, really New England successfully cut off Canada from French reinforcement. And actually, there was a chance that the American colonies with this could have been able to outright conquer New France. However, instead you get like politically influential merchants in Albany, so in the New York colony, would actually trade with the enemy of New France, which enabled them to hold out against the American columns. And then when this war was over, when the peace treaty was signed in 1748, Britain returned Louisbourg back to France. Now the thing is, this is really a routine diplomatic adjustment by European standards, but it shocked New Englanders who felt like, they should have gotten something out of this war. But at the same time, the whole illegal trade between, the New York colony and New France had appalled British administrators. What we can say is, coming out of this, New France has definitely suffered more in this conflict than any previous conflict. Traders from Pennsylvania are going to begin to move west to buy furs from Indians who had once traded with the French. This is really concerning to New France because they feel like now England is even more a commercial rival to them. And so New France is going to set out to assert direct control over this entire region, and they start building a series of forts all the way from Lake Erie to the forks of the Ohio River. And this basically means also with Great Britain moving further west and going up and under the Iroquois League, and France, establishing themselves even more firmly, we've got the Iroquois League completely trapped in between the British and the French empires. So I ask you this question as part of your journal. Why is this important? Why do we talk about this? Why don't I just skip straight to the French and Indian War, which is the next war on the next PowerPoint?